welcome to our deep dive. So it seems like you're curious about the Quran,
Yeah.
specifically about this whole idea that it can save your life,
Right.
both now and in the afterlife, right? And since this is all pretty new to you, I thought maybe we could start by exploring some core concepts, without getting too bogged down in the details.
That sounds good.
Just kind of get a feel for the big picture.
What's really interesting about the Quran is that it's so much more than just a religious text.
Okay.
I mean, it really does provide very practical advice on how to live a good life.
So it's like a guidebook for living, basically.
Yeah, you could say that.
But how does that tie into this concept of saving your life?
Right.
Especially, for someone who's not really familiar with Islam or the idea of an afterlife.
Well, for Muslims, the Quran is believed to be the word of God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad.
Right.
It's divided into chapters called surahs, and they cover a huge range of topics, everything from stories to laws, ethical guidelines.
Wow.
Even insights about nature. And all of these teachings are meant to ultimately lead you toward a path of righteousness, which is what Muslims believe is essential for salvation in the hereafter.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the connection here.
Yeah.
So, following the Quran's teachings, it's not just about being a good person in this life, right?
No.
But it's also about preparing for what comes after death.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about understanding that your actions in this world have consequences that extend beyond just, your earthly life.
Okay.
And the Quran, it provides this kind of roadmap for navigating all of those, complexity. Right. And it guides you toward a life that, is pleasing to God and leads to...
And ultimately leads to eternal reward, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So it's like a cosmic GPS, basically. Yeah. It helps you avoid those pitfalls and stay on track for the ultimate destination.
Exactly.
Okay. But for someone who's totally unfamiliar with this terrain,
sure.
What are some of the key landmarks, the key principles that the Quran emphasizes?
Well, one of the most fundamental teachings is the belief in one God, Allah, and the importance of submitting to his will.
Okay.
And this submission is called Islam.
Okay.
And it's really the foundation of Muslim life.
Okay.
From there, the Quran emphasizes values like compassion, honesty, justice, treating others with respect.
Okay, so there's a strong social element to this as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about your individual
It's not just
relationship with God, but it's also about how you interact with people and the world around you.
Exactly. And that ties directly into the idea that the Quran can save your life. Because Muslims believe that by living according to these principles, they're not only creating, a more just and harmonious society, but also purifying their souls.
Okay.
And earning God's favor.
Which
is what ultimately leads to salvation.
And that's ultimately what leads to salvation in the hereafter.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like the Quran's offering this recipe for a good life, both now and in the next life.
Exactly.
But, recipes can be pretty vague sometimes. Right? Are there any specific examples in the Quran that really illustrate this connection between following its teachings and experiencing real world benefits?
For instance, the Quran strongly prohibited things like drinking alcohol and gambling, both of which can have really devastating consequences for individuals, families, society as a whole.
Right. So those are pretty clear examples of how, following the Quran's guidance could lead to a healthier, more stable life, even if you don't consider the spiritual dimension of it.
Precisely.
Okay.
And there are many other examples.
Okay.
The Quran encourages maintaining strong family ties, showing kindness to parents. It stresses the importance of fairness in business dealings and condemns cheating or taking advantage of others.
Right.
So all of these teachings, while rooted in faith, have very real and practical implications.
Okay, so it's following these seemingly religious guidelines actually has a ripple effect.
Exactly.
Right? It actually promotes a more beneficial society for everyone.
Right.
Not just Muslims.
The Quran really highlights the interconnectedness of our actions and emphasizes that individual righteousness contributes to collective well-being. A society flourishes when its individuals strive for honesty, compassion, justice in all aspects of their lives.
Yeah, so that interconnectedness between personal faith and social well-being is...
It's a recurring theme.
The recurring theme.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the Quran saving your life, it's not just about like avoiding hellfire in the afterlife, right? It's about creating a life that's meaningful, fulfilling, and has a positive impact on the world around you.
The Quran offers this comprehensive framework for living a life that is both beneficial to the individual and the community.
Yeah.
It's a journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Ultimately striving for excellence in all areas of life with the goal of earning God's favor and attaining eternal bliss in the hereafter.
Okay, so we've talked about this concept of the hereafter, this idea of life after death and eternal reward or punishment.
Right.
Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure.
How does the Quran portray the hereafter?
Well, the Quran describes the day of judgment when all of humanity will be held accountable for their actions. It describes paradise as a reward for those who believed in God and lived righteously, a place of unimaginable beauty and eternal happiness.
Wow.
And conversely, it describes hell as a consequence for those who rejected faith and lived in disobedience to God's will, a place of suffering and eternal regret.
Wow, that's a pretty vivid picture.
It is.
It seems like the Quran really wants to drive home this point.
Yeah.
That our choices in this life have eternal implications.
Right. These descriptions are meant to serve as a powerful motivation for believers to live with awareness and intentionality.
Yeah.
Your actions in this life are not just fleeting moments, but they contribute to your eternal destiny.
Wow, that's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about, you know, the choices you make and how they align with your values.
Right.
I'm curious, how does the Quran handle this question of forgiveness?
Sure.
What if someone makes mistakes? Is there any hope for redemption?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that the Quran addresses quite extensively. While the Quran emphasizes accountability for your actions, it also highlights God's immense mercy and forgiveness. There are many stories in the Quran that illustrate this concept, showing how even those who have strayed from the path can find redemption through sincere repentance and turning back to God.
Okay, so that's reassuring to hear.
It is.
It suggests that the Quran isn't just about rigid rules and punishments, but it's also about offering hope and a path toward redemption for those who seek it.
The Quran emphasizes that God is not eager to punish, but rather desires for his creations to find their way back to him.
That's nice.
It's a message of hope and encouragement, reminding us that even when we make mistakes, we always have the opportunity to turn back to God and seek his forgiveness.
Okay, so we've talked about the foundational beliefs and values emphasized in the Quran. But I'm curious about the stories and parables you mentioned earlier. What role do those play?
Well, the stories in the Quran are incredibly powerful teaching tools. They offer practical examples of how to navigate life's challenges, how to deal with temptation, and how to make righteous choices. Even in difficult circumstances, they bring abstract concepts to light and make them relatable, providing guidance and inspiration.
I can see how stories would be particularly helpful for someone new to the Quran. They provide like concrete examples of how these teachings actually play out in real life.
It makes it real.
Like, do any specific stories stand out?
Oh, there are so many.
Okay.
But one that comes to mind is the story of Prophet Joseph.
Okay.
He faced betrayal, imprisonment, immense temptations. Yet he remained steadfast in his faith and integrity.
So it's a story about resilience and forgiveness and trusting in God's plan even when things seem hopeless?
Exactly. And it highlights the idea that true success lies not in worldly achievements or material possessions, but in remaining true to your values and striving for righteousness, even when it's difficult.
That's an incredibly powerful message.
It is.
Especially in today's world. Where it can be so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of material success and lose sight of what truly matters.
The Quran emphasizes that true wealth lies in spiritual richness, in cultivating a strong connection with God, and living a life that is pleasing to Him.
Okay, so we've covered some of the key principles and values and stories found in the Quran.
Right.
But can we delve a bit deeper into how these teachings are meant to be applied in daily life? How does the Quran guide believers?
Well, the Quran provides practical guidance on a wide range of issues. From personal conduct to social interactions to financial dealings.
So it's not just about like these abstract theological concepts, but it's about actually providing concrete guidance for navigating the complexities of the real world.
Exactly. For example, the Quran encourages believers to be mindful of their speech, to speak truthfully and kindly, and to avoid gossip or slander. It emphasizes the importance of fulfilling promises and honoring commitments. It encourages acts of charity and compassion towards those in need.
So all of these teachings are about translating faith into action. Making it a living, breathing part of your everyday life. I'm starting to see how the Quran's teachings can be woven into the fabric of daily life,
Guiding your decisions and shaping your interactions with the world around you. But let's get even more specific. Can you give an example for a real-life situation?
Absolutely.
Where someone might actually turn to the Quran for guidance?
Imagine someone is facing a difficult ethical dilemma at work. They're tempted to cut corners or compromise their values to get ahead, but their conscience is telling them it's wrong.
We've all been there.
The Quran would remind them of the importance of honesty, integrity, and trustworthiness, even when it's difficult. It would encourage them to seek a solution that aligns with their values, even if it means sacrificing some personal gain.
So it's not just about blindly following rules.
It's not.
But it's about actually using the Quran's principles as a framework for ethical decision-making, even in challenging situations.
Exactly. The Quran provides a compass that helps you navigate
those gray areas of life.
Those tough situations.
Situations where it's not always clear but the right choices. It encourages you to reflect, to consult with knowledgeable individuals, and ultimately to choose the path that aligns with your values and with God's will.
So that's incredibly helpful.
It is.
Especially for someone who might be feeling lost or uncertain.
Exactly.
It's like having this moral guidebook that you can turn to for support and direction.
And it's important to remember that this guidance isn't just for individuals. The Quran also addresses the responsibilities of leaders and those in positions of authority, emphasizing justice, fairness, and protecting the vulnerable.
So it's about creating a society that reflects the Quran's values of compassion, equity, and righteousness. So the Quran is about...
It's about both.
Personal transformation and societal transformation working hand in hand to create a better world.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
I think we've laid a solid foundation here for understanding some of the key principles of the Quran and how they can guide a person towards a more fulfilling life, both in this world and the next.
I agree.
But before we move on, I want to ask you about something that I think a lot of people, especially those who aren't familiar with Islam, might be wondering about. We've talked about how the Quran can save your life. But sometimes, especially in the media, we hear this term jihad associated with Islam, and often in kind of a negative way. How does the Quran address that concept?
That's a really important question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because there's a lot of misunderstanding surrounding this term. The word jihad actually translates to struggle or striving, and in the Quran, it's used in a variety of contexts.
So it's not just about, violence and warfare, as it's sometimes portrayed.
Exactly. In fact, the most important jihad is the internal struggle against one's own desires and temptations.
So it's that struggle to overcome negativity and selfishness and to purify your soul.
Precisely.
So conquering your inner demons, basically.
You got it.
And striving to become a better person.
Exactly. But jihad can also refer to the effort to spread the message of Islam peacefully through education and good deeds.
So sharing the beauty and wisdom of the Quran with others in a way that's inviting and respectful?
Exactly. And then, yes, in certain very specific and limited circumstances, jihad can refer to the defense of oneself or one's community against aggression or oppression.
So it's not about waging war for the sake of conquest or imposing your beliefs on others.
But it's about defending yourself and your community when there's no other option, right?
Right. It's a last resort.
A last resort.
Not something to be taken lightly.
Okay.
The Quran prioritizes peace and reconciliation whenever possible.
That's really important to clarify.
It is.
So when we talk about the Quran saving your life, it's not about condoning violence, but about striving for righteousness.
It is.
Both within yourself and in the world around you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's about working towards a world where justice, compassion, and understanding prevail.
Right.
And about aligning your actions with a higher purpose that transcends the limitations of this world.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
I think we've covered a lot of ground in understanding the core principles of the Quran and how they relate to living a good life and preparing for the hereafter.
I agree.
I think our listener now has a much clearer understanding
of what it means when we say the Quran can save your life.
Yeah.
It's about purifying your soul, acting righteously, and striving for a better world, both for yourself and for others.
Exactly.
It's clear that the Quran offers a path towards a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to hear more about specific passages from the Quran that really illustrate these ideas.
Sure.
Can you share a few
Absolutely.
that you find particularly powerful or insightful?
Let's start with a verse from Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 2.
Okay.
The believers are only those who, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts become fearful.
Okay.
And when his verses are recited to them, it increases them in faith.
Okay.
And upon their Lord they rely.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
Even for someone new to the Quran.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway from this verse?
It's about the transformative power of truly connecting with the Quran.
Okay.
When you engage with its message sincerely, it can awaken your heart, deepen your faith, and lead you to a more profound understanding of your relationship with God.
So it's not just about...
It's not just reading the words.
Reading the words, but it's about letting them resonate within you.
Exactly.
Right, allowing them to guide
It is.
your heart and your actions.
It is. The Quran isn't just a book of rules to be followed, but a source of inspiration and guidance meant to illuminate your path and draw you closer to God.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
It makes me think about how the Quran is often recited in this melodic, beautiful way.
Right.
It's almost like the sound itself carries spiritual power, you know, that can move and inspire you.
You're right.
Yeah.
The Quran is meant to be experienced on multiple levels, not just intellectually, but also emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah.
Its beauty and rhythm can touch the heart and awaken a sense of awe and wonder.
So it's about engaging with the Quran.
Yeah.
With all of your senses, right?
It is.
Allowing its message to permeate your entire being.
Exactly.
Okay. So when you approach it with that kind of openness and sincerity, you open yourself up to the transformative power of its teaching.
Exactly.
This is also fascinating.
It is.
But before we get too carried away, let's take a step back and look at another passage that you find particularly relevant to our deep dive topic.
Let's delve into Surah Al-Az, chapter 103.
Okay.
It's very short, but incredibly profound chapter that emphasizes the importance of time and righteous actions. It reads, "By time, indeed, mankind is in loss, except for those who have believed and done righteous deeds, and advised each other to truth, and advised each other to patience."
Wow, those are powerful words. They really highlight this, like urgency of making the most of our time and using it wisely to pursue both faith and good deeds.
It's a reminder that our time on this earth is precious and fleeting, and that we should strive to use it in a way that is meaningful and beneficial, both for ourselves and for others.
It also seems to highlight this importance of community. right? Like supporting each other on this journey towards righteousness.
Exactly.
And encouraging each other to stay on the path.
The Quran often emphasizes the collective nature of our journey and the importance of mutual support and encouragement. It reminds us that we're not alone on this path and that we can draw strength and inspiration from one another.
It's about creating a community where everyone is encouraged to grow spiritually and to contribute to the greater good.
The Quran envisions a world where justice, compassion, and understanding prevail. And it calls on believers to actively work towards realizing that vision.
And speaking of, like, actively working towards that vision, the Quran also talks about the importance of striving and struggling, right?
Yes.
It's not about passively accepting fate, but about actively working towards a better future, both for yourself and for the world, right?
You're absolutely right. The Quran acknowledges that life is filled with challenges and tests.
Yeah, for sure.
But emphasizes that these trials are opportunities for growth and purification. In Surah Al-Ankabut, chapter 29, verse 2, it says, "Do the people think that they will be left to say, 'We believe,' and they will not be tried?"
So these challenges aren't meant to break us.
They're not.
But to strengthen our faith and our resilience.
Exactly. The Quran reminds us that facing difficulties with patience and steadfastness is a sign of true faith. And that overcoming those obstacles brings us closer to God and strengthens our connection with Him.
That's such an empowering message.
It is.
It reframes challenges as opportunities for growth. And reminds us that even in the midst of hardship, there is always hope and a path toward greater understanding.
Exactly. And by approaching these challenges with faith and determination, we can not only overcome them, but also emerge stronger and more spiritually mature. The Quran teaches that even in the darkest of times, God is with us, guiding us and providing us with the strength to persevere.
Well, we've covered so much ground already.
We have.
And it's clear that there's so much more to explore within the Quran. But for now, let's pause here and continue our deep dive in the next segment.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Quran. I hope you've had some time to reflect on the idea of the Quran as a guide for navigating life's challenges and striving for a better world.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about. We talked about some pretty big concepts. Like the hereafter and the importance of righteous actions. But I'm curious about how these ideas actually translate into everyday life. Does the Quran offer any, like, practical guidance?
It does.
For navigating those daily choices and decisions?
Absolutely. One of the things that makes the Quran so fascinating is its emphasis on balance and moderation in all aspects of life.
I like that idea.
It's not about extremes or deprivation. It's about finding that middle path that leads to both spiritual and worldly well-being.
Can you give me a concrete example of how this principle of balance actually plays out in the Quran?
Think about something as simple as spending money. In Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 29, the Quran says, "And do not make your hand as chained to your neck or extend it completely, and thereby become blamed and insolvent." This verse is often interpreted as a reminder
to be neither miserly nor extravagant in our spending.
So it's about finding that that sweet spot between being a Scrooge and being a shopaholic.
Exactly.
The
Quran encourages us to be generous and to share our wealth with those in need, but it also cautions against reckless spending that could lead to financial ruin.
That's actually really practical advice. And it shows how the Quran's teachings can be applied to, like, very real-world situations, you know?
Exactly. And this principle of balance extends to other areas of life as well.
Like what?
For instance, the Quran encourages hard work and striving for success, but it also emphasizes the importance of rest and recreation.
You know, that really resonates with me.
It does.
I think a lot of us struggle with that, like work-life balance these days.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to take care of ourselves. The Quran reminds us that our well-being is multifaceted. It's not just about achieving material success, but about cultivating a sense of inner peace and contentment as well.
So it's about striving for success, but not at the expense of our health, our relationships, right? Or our spiritual well-being.
In Surah Al-Qasas, chapter 28, verse 77, the Quran reminds us, but seek through that which Allah has given you, the home of the hereafter, and yet do not forget your share of the world, and do good as Allah has done good to you, and desire not corruption in the land. Indeed, Allah does not like corruptors.
That verse really speaks to that interconnectedness of our actions, right?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that our pursuit of worldly success shouldn't come at the expense of our spiritual growth or the well-being of others.
Exactly. The Quran emphasizes that true success encompasses both material and spiritual prosperity. It's about striving for excellence in all areas of life, while also recognizing our responsibility to contribute to the well-being of the world around us.
It's fascinating how the Quran offers guidance on such a wide range of issues. It really does seem to provide a holistic framework for living a good life.
It does.
And that holistic approach is also evident in how the Quran addresses the topic of relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about relationships. What are some of the key principles that the Quran emphasizes in this area?
One of the fundamental teachings is the importance of treating others with kindness, respect, and compassion, regardless of their background or beliefs. In Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 13, the Quran says, O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted.
So it's about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every human being.
It is.
And treating them with respect.
Exactly.
Regardless of their differences.
The Quran challenges us to look beyond those superficial differences. And to see each other as fellow human beings deserving of our compassion and understanding.
That's such an important message.
It is.
Especially in a world that can often feel so divided.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that our shared humanity transcends our differences.
And this emphasis on compassion extends to all of our relationships, from our interactions with family and friends to our dealings with strangers, and even our treatment of those who may have wronged us.
Wait, even our enemies. The Quran encourages us to show compassion to those who have harmed us.
While the Quran certainly allows for self-defense and the protection of oneself and one's community, it also emphasizes forgiveness and reconciliation whenever possible. It's about recognizing that holding on to anger and resentment only harms ourselves in the end.
That's a really challenging concept.
It is.
But it's also incredibly powerful. It's about breaking that cycle of violence and hatred.
It is.
And seeking a path towards healing and understanding.
The Quran teaches that true strength lies not in retaliation, but in rising above the desire for revenge and choosing compassion instead.
That's a perspective
that
I think we could all benefit from.
I agree.
Both in our personal lives and in our approach to global conflicts.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that peace and reconciliation are always worth striving for.
They are.
Even when it's difficult.
And the Quran provides a framework for pursuing that peace, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
Okay, so we've talked about balance, compassion, and the importance of building strong relationships. Are there any other key themes that emerge when we look at how the Quran guides us in navigating daily life?
Well, one theme that's woven throughout the Quran is the importance of gratitude. It encourages us to cultivate a sense of appreciation for the blessings in our lives, both big and small.
I can see how that would be beneficial, especially today, where it's so easy to get caught up in what we lack and to constantly compare ourselves to others.
The Quran reminds us that true happiness doesn't come from accumulating more possessions or achieving greater status, but from appreciating what we already have.
So it's about shifting our focus from what we're missing to what we've been given, recognizing the abundance that already exists. in our lives.
And this attitude of gratitude is not just about feeling good.
Right.
It's also about recognizing that everything we have is a gift from God.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging our dependence on Him.
Okay, so gratitude is about recognizing and appreciating God's gifts.
Yes.
And acknowledging our reliance on Him.
It is.
But how does that translate into action?
Right.
Does the Quran offer any specific guidance?
It does.
On how to cultivate this sense of gratitude?
The Quran encourages practices like giving thanks in prayer, reflecting on the beauty of creation, and helping those in need. These actions not only express our gratitude, but also help us to deepen our awareness of God's presence in our lives.
It's like those actions create a positive feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Reinforcing our sense of gratitude and strengthening our connection.
It does. And by cultivating this attitude of gratitude, we begin to experience the world differently.
We become more aware of the good things in our lives, less focused on what we lack, and more motivated to share our blessings with others.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is.
It's about shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Exactly.
Recognizing that we have more than enough to share.
And this spirit of generosity is at the heart of many of the Quran's teachings, particularly when it comes to the concept of charity or zakat.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Sure.
We mentioned earlier that zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam.
It is.
Can you explain what it is and how it connects to the ideas we've been discussing?
Zakat is a form of obligatory charity that requires Muslims to give a certain percentage of their wealth to those in need. It's considered a purification of wealth and a way of acknowledging that everything we have ultimately belongs to God.
So it's not just about giving out of kindness?
It's both, but about fulfilling a religious obligation.
It's both.
Okay.
Zakat is a spiritual practice that cultivates generosity and compassion while also addressing a very real social need.
Right.
It's a way of ensuring that wealth is distributed more equitably and that those who are struggling have access to basic necessities.
I can see how that would have a profound impact on both the individual and the community. Right.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we have a responsibility to care for one another.
Yes.
And to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Quran emphasizes that our wealth is not truly ours to hoard, but rather a trust from God, that we are obligated to share with those less fortunate.
It's about recognizing that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate for ourselves, but in how we use our resources to make a positive impact on the world.
Precisely.
And this concept of sharing and caring for others is not limited to financial resources.
No, it's not.
The Quran also encourages us to share our time, our talents and our knowledge to benefit others. So it's about recognizing that we all have something valuable to offer.
Exactly.
Regardless of our
it doesn't matter.
Material wealth or social status.
The Quran reminds us that even a small act of kindness can have a ripple effect. Creating a more compassionate and just world.
This has been such an enriching conversation.
It has.
We've explored the Quran's guidance on balanced relationships, gratitude, and even the concept of charity.
We have.
It's clear that these teachings offer practical wisdom.
They do.
For navigating daily life and creating a more meaningful and fulfilling existence.
I agree.
And I think our listener is starting to see
I think so too.
How the Quran, when approached with an open heart and a sincere desire to learn, can truly be a guide for saving your life, both in this world and in the next.
Exactly.
It's about cultivating a life of righteousness, compassion, and service, both for your own benefit and for the benefit of all humanity.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
sure,
I'd like to touch on a topic that can sometimes be confusing for those who are new to Islam.
Sure. What is it?
We've talked about the importance of prayer in Islam.
We have.
But can you explain what prayer looks like in practice?
Of course.
Like, what are the specific rituals involved?
Yeah.
And how do they connect to this idea of the Quran saving your life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Prayer, or salat, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and is considered a fundamental act of worship. Muslims pray 5 times a day at specific times throughout the day, facing the Kaaba in Mecca.
Okay, so there's a specific structure
there is
and direction involved. But what does the actual prayer consist of? Is it just reciting verses from the Quran?
It's more than just recitation. Salat involves a series of postures and movements, including standing, bowing, prostrating, and sitting, all while reciting specific verses from the Quran and offering supplications to God.
It sounds like a very physical and embodied form of prayer.
It is. Yeah. It's about engaging your entire being in the act of worship, both physically and mentally. The movements are meant to cultivate humility and surrender. While the recitation of the Quran serves as a reminder of God's presence and guidance.
I can see how that would be a powerful way to connect with the divine, to step away from the distractions of daily life.
Exactly.
And focus on your relationship with God.
Salat is a form of spiritual nourishment. A time to reconnect with your inner self and to reaffirm your commitment to God. It's a space for reflection, gratitude, and supplication.
So it's not just about
it's not just asking
God for things.
Right.
But it's about cultivating a sense of awe and reverence.
It is.
About expressing gratitude for his blessings, right?
Exactly.
And about seeking his guidance in your life.
It's about nurturing that relationship with God and allowing it to inform every aspect of your life.
Okay, and how does this practice of prayer connect to the idea of the Quran saving your life?
Salat serves as a constant reminder of the Quran's teachings and helps to integrate them into the fabric of daily life.
So it's not just about setting aside a specific time for prayer. But about carrying that spirit of prayer with you throughout the day.
Exactly.
Allowing it to inform your thoughts, words, and actions.
The Quran encourages us to remember God in all that we do. To seek his guidance in our decisions. And to strive to live in a way that is pleasing to him. And prayer provides a powerful tool for cultivating that awareness and commitment.
It seems like the 5 daily prayers act as these anchors throughout the day.
Yeah, they do.
Reminding you of your priorities and helping you stay focused on the things that truly matter.
Exactly. And they provide a rhythm to your day, offering moments of stillness and reflection amidst the busyness of life.
It's about finding that balance between outward action and inward reflection. Between engaging with the world and nurturing your spiritual well-being.
Precisely.
And through this practice of prayer, we cultivate a deeper connection with God, strengthen our faith, and find the guidance and support we need to navigate life's challenges.
We do.
And to live in a way that is truly fulfilling.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It has been.
We've explored the practical applications of the Quran in daily life. Discussed the importance of balance, compassion, gratitude, charity. And even delved into the practice of prayer.
Exactly.
I'm eager to continue this journey of discovery.
Me too.
But for now, let's take a break.
Okay.
And pick up where we left off in the next segment. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Quran. We've explored so much already.
We have.
From foundational principles to practical applications in daily life. Now, I'm really curious to kind of delve into this topic that we touched on earlier, this idea of finding inner peace.
Okay.
Does the Quran offer any guidance?
It does.
On cultivating that sense of calmness and well-being amidst all the challenges of life?
It absolutely does. In fact, the Quran offers a wealth of wisdom on how to navigate the inner landscape of our hearts and minds.
I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with finding that inner peace these days.
That's true.
We're just bombarded with so much information and stimulation. It's hard to just quiet the mind.
It is.
And find that sense of stillness.
You're right. It's a common struggle in today's world. But the Quran provides this timeless guidance that's just as relevant today as it was centuries ago. One of the key concepts it emphasizes is the importance of remembrance of God, known as dhikr in Arabic.
Okay, dhikr, remembrance of God. But what does that actually look like in practice? Is it just about
It's more than that.
Reciting prayers or memorizing verses?
It's about cultivating this constant awareness of God's presence in your life, this sense of connection to something larger than yourself. It can involve reciting prayers or verses, but it can also be as simple as taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of creation or reflecting on the blessings in your life.
So it's about finding those moments
throughout
the day to pause, breathe, and just kind of reconnect with that sense of the divine.
It's like a mindfulness practice,
Yeah.
Bringing your attention back to the present moment and acknowledging the presence of the divine in every aspect of your experience.
And the Quran suggests
it does
that this practice of dhikr has a profound impact on our inner state.
It really does.
Do you have a particular verse in mind
I do.
that speaks to that?
In Surah Ar-Ra'd, chapter 13, verse 28, the Quran says, "Those who have believed and whose hearts are assured by the remembrance of Allah, unquestionably by the remembrance of Allah, hearts are assured."
I love that. It's like an antidote,
It is.
to all the anxiety and uncertainty that we often face in life.
Exactly.
By remembering God, by connecting to that source of peace and stability, we can actually find that sense of assurance within ourselves. The Quran reminds us that true peace and contentment don't come from external achievements or possessions, but from cultivating that deep connection with the divine.
Precisely.
This reminds me of all those verses we talked about, about the fleeting nature.
Exactly.
And the importance of focusing on the eternal. It's about shifting your perspective. Recognizing that true fulfillment lies not in the temporary, but in the eternal.
Exactly.
By detaching ourselves from the things that cause us stress and anxiety, from that constant striving for more, we can actually find a sense of peace that transcends the ups and downs of life.
It's not about denying the challenges or pretending they don't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
But about finding a way to navigate them with a sense of grace and equanimity, knowing that we're ultimately supported by something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another important concept.
It does.
That the Quran emphasizes. Tawakkul, or reliance on God.
Right.
Okay, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
But how does it actually translate?
It's a good question.
Into everyday life? What does it actually mean to rely on God?
Tawakkul is about trusting in God's plan, even when we don't understand it, or when things aren't going our way. It's about surrendering our worries and fears to a higher power and having faith that everything will ultimately work out for the best.
That sounds really challenging, honestly.
It can be.
Especially when we're in the midst of a difficult situation.
It's easy to say trust in God when things are going well.
Right, exactly.
But how do we actually hold on to that trust?
Yeah, how do we...
When we're facing, real hardship and uncertainty, it's definitely a practice, something we have to cultivate over time. But the Quran is filled with reminders that God is always with us, that he hears our prayers, and that he will never burden us with more than we can bear.
Wow.
It's about remembering those truths, even when our emotions are telling us otherwise.
Are there any specific verses that speak to this idea of
there are
trusting in God's plan, even when it's hard to see the bigger picture?
One that I find particularly powerful is from Surah At-Talaq, chapter 65, verse 3. And whoever relies upon Allah, then he is sufficient for him. Indeed, Allah will accomplish his purpose. Allah has already set for everything a decreed extent.
Wow. That's really reassuring.
It is.
It's a reminder that even when we feel lost and alone, we can always turn to God for support and guidance.
And it's not about being passive or resigning ourselves to our fate. It's about doing everything we can to create a positive outcome. While also recognizing that we're not in control of everything. It's about finding that balance between effort and surrender, between action and acceptance.
So it's about striving to create the life we want. While also being open to the possibility that things might unfold differently than we expect.
Exactly.
It's about trusting that even those unexpected turns can lead us to something good. Something we might not have been able to imagine for ourselves.
Exactly. It's about letting go of that need to control everything and finding a sense of peace in knowing that we're ultimately in God's care.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective, honestly.
I'm glad. On
the Quran and its potential to not only guide our actions, but also to shape our inner world,
It can.
And for our listener who's just beginning their exploration of the Quran, what final piece of advice would you offer?
I would say approach the Quran with an open heart and a genuine desire to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions. to seek guidance from those who are more knowledgeable, and to engage in respectful dialogue with others who may have different interpretations. The Quran is a book that has inspired millions of people for centuries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And its teachings have the power to transform lives and to create a more just and compassionate world.
Beautifully said. And remember, listener, the Quran invites us not just to read its word, but to embody its teachings in our thoughts, words, and actions. It's a journey of learning, growth, and striving to become the best versions of ourselves, both for our own well-being and for the benefit of all humanity.
It is a journey.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
May your exploration of the Quran be filled with meaning, insight, and a profound sense of peace.